It is my duty to inform the House that the Speaker is unavoidably absent. Therefore, in accordance with the statutes, I would ask the Deputy Speaker to please take the chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please be seated. Orders of the day. No, that was this morning. Routine proceedings. Committee, our introduction of bills. Committee reports. The member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Your Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Dispense. The member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the report of the committee be received.
Thank you. It has been moved by the Honourable Member for La Vérendrye, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the first report of the Standing Committee of Agriculture and Food.
Your Standing Committee on Agriculture and Food.
The Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member from Midland, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie, seconded by the Honourable Member for Midland, that the first report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Food be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. Tabling of reports. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to table the Legal Aid Manitoba annual report for the fiscal year 2021-2022.
No other reports? Ministerial statements? I believe there are none. Members' statements. The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak about a good friend who has chosen to retire from public life. His Honour Rick Crest, the current Mayor of the City of Brandon, is not running for re-election this October. Rick served 2 terms as Brandon's 32nd Mayor, first being elected in 2014. He had previously served 3 terms on Brandon City Council, and that experience served him very well as Mayor. Mayor Crest worked hard to create a collegial and cooperative style of government. He was well regarded by councillors, by the citizens of Brandon, and by his peers at the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. As with many elected officials over the last few years, Rick faced many challenges and had many difficult decisions, but he seemed to take it all in stride although I know his compassion and caring always shone through, despite the sometimes negative environment. Rick has a passion for Brandon, Westman, and Manitoba, but I know his heart is with his family, and they are very close. Karen is his rock, and he always has much to learn from Caitlin, Dylan, and Brett. Rick and Karen recently added the grandparents' titles to their achievements, and I know that Charlotte has taken center stage in their lives. I know they would love to be with us here today, but I can neither confirm nor deny that Rick may have been drawn away to Kamloops with an opportunity for a hug and snuggles with Charlotte. Rick's hugs are legendary, and I know the last couple of years have caused them to be somewhat rare. Thank you for your service, my friend. Hugs on your retirement.
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
The Pembina Curling Club celebrates its 75th anniversary this year after growing from a group of 36 citizens in a church hall to a club of more than 1,000 members. In May of 1947, a group of volunteer community members set out to build the first curling club in Fort Garry, led by Art Elders. The club began raising funds by selling $50 shares to community members in order to build a 4-sheet curling club on the same lot, which still houses the club to this date. In December 1947, they held the first junior bonspiel on the new minted ice. And now, almost 75 years later, the club is honored to host the upcoming 2022 Canadian Masters Curling Championships from November 13th to the 20th. The club continues to innovate and serve the Fort Garry community. It's recently opened an outdoor beer garden this past year, adding a new community gathering place where Fort Garrians can meet and enjoy live music. The club also regularly hosts Learn to Curl nights, where those unfamiliar with the game can come to learn the ins and outs of the game while meeting new people. These efforts are helping the club to achieve its goal of having a diverse and representative membership from the community, as the club actively pursues more women and newcomer members from the Fort Garry and South Winnipeg area. Fort Garry Curling Club has become the beating heart of that community. In the gallery today, we have club members Tom Price, Scott Ross, and Terry Vopney. Please join me in thanking them for their efforts to build a warm and welcoming community that shares the love of curling.
The honourable member for Radisson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to deliver this private member statement today on your behalf. Yes, indeed, the sentiments that are about to follow, I give full credit to the member for Rossmere, although I must say I wholeheartedly agree with them. This weekend, Canadians will celebrate Thanksgiving, gathering with family and friends for food and fellowship. But aside from the usual traditions of pumpkin pie and turkey, Thanksgiving weekend causes us all to pause and to consider what we are grateful for. Canadians, including myself, can sometimes be more prone to complain than compliment, to grumble than be grateful, to be thankless more than thankful. But the Thanksgiving holiday invites us to give thanks for the many blessings of living in our beautiful province of Manitoba, in this beautiful country of Canada. We're not on the brink of war or starvation. Law and order are the rule, not the exception. We benefit from education, healthcare, roads, police, fire, and ambulance services, the rule of law, and democracy. These are not perfect, but they are still very much intact, and for this we can be grateful. We should also be thankful for free speech. It remains legal to criticize, disagree, and argue without fear or favor. The thought of devoting an entire holiday to gratitude is almost unthinkable by today's standards. Cynicism, criticism, entitlement, those are the emotional default settings much of the time. But gratitude offers us a chance to change our perspective. It displaces negativity, and it reminds us that the glass is often far more than half full. In light of history and the world around us, we who live in Canada in Manitoba have so much to be grateful for. We should not take that for granted. I believe being truly thankful can transform your heart. So I would like to take this opportunity on behalf and together with the member for Rossmere to wish all members, legislative staff, and all viewers a very happy Thanksgiving. And to put on the record that we thank God for the many ways that Canada is a blessed country, even as we work together to make it better for our children and their children after them.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Marilyn McGonigal was a remarkable Manitoban. Over her career, she helped shape laws in Manitoba and push for women's rights and economic fairness. She did this important feminist work as a co-founder of the first all-women law firm here in our great province. She was a trailblazer in this respect, and it couldn't have been easy. Marilyn was actually trained as a teacher. She got married, she started a family, but then in the 1970s, she decided to go back to school. She got her law degree and was called to the bar. She did all this while raising 3 energetic children. In addition to the legal profession, she served as a president of the Provincial Council of Women of Manitoba and was active with the John Howard and Elizabeth Fry societies. She advocated publicly for increases to the minimum wage, against family violence, and in favor of improved conditions for those incarcerated. A careful student of history will see her name in the proceedings of this esteemed chamber, speaking thoughtfully at committee on these issues of human rights. She always found time to be a devoted grandmother to her grandchildren, Jordan, Michaela, Kelsey, Megan, and Hannah. Marilyn told me that she enjoyed having them over for get-togethers at the pool in her condo building. I know this because she used to host our Fort Rouge NDP Association meetings in the sunroom next door. She was a tireless volunteer and an incisive participant in policy discussions. Sadly, Marilyn left us in June after a battle with cancer, joining her son Tom. On July 17th, a large crowd of Manitobans from all walks of life joined to celebrate her life. Her sons Dan and Larry spoke well on that day, and they surely did their mom proud. Marilyn McGonigal made Manitoba a better place. To her we say, we remember you, miigwech, merci, and thank you. Her family joins us today in the gallery.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'm happy to rise this afternoon and speak about some very special guests who are up in the gallery. First off, you'll see 40 grade 7 students from Stanley Knowles School. They had an educational tour this morning of the Legislative Building, ate some pizza, and created a question that I have the honor of asking to our Premier later today in question period. But right now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to recognize Mr. Vincent Williams. Mr. Williams taught at a Cole Stanley Knowles School from 1990 until his recent retirement this past June. He served in our education system for 30 years. Mr. Speaker, I spoke with some faculty at Stanley Knowles, and a few of their remarks about Mr. Williams included how he truly made connections with kids and believed in the ability of every student. He stood out for his grace and diplomacy that he brought into his classrooms, and he is a true gentleman, a fine educator, and so thoughtful and kind with all of his colleagues. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Williams has dedicated so much to our province, and he even set such a strong example in the field of education that his daughter, Sonia Williams, has become a vice principal. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, everyone I spoke to reminded me how Mr. Williams does not like the spotlight, so I'm going to turn it to his family, who have joined him today in the gallery. We have up in the gallery right now his wife, Elnor Williams, his daughter, Sonia Williams. And very shortly, I am sure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will have Christopher Williams, his son, Shanice Williams, his daughter-in-law, Isaiah Williams, his grandson, and Arzaria Williams, his granddaughter. And of course, the man of the hour himself, Mr. Vincent Williams. Thank you for your 30 years of service in our education system here in Manitoba, and I would like to ask my colleagues to help me recognize him for this honor. Thank you.
And just before we move forward with oral questions, I do want to acknowledge some students in the gallery. As the member for Tyndall Park just mentioned, we have seated in the public gallery from Stanley Knowles School 40 grade 7 students under the direction of Tori Vickland. This group is located in the constituency of the honorable member for Tyndall Park. We welcome you to the Manitoba Legislature. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Acting Speaker, for many Manitobans, home care is an essential part of a good quality of life. Yet the government's own records, which I will table today, show that their cuts mean that there are more Manitobans than ever who need home care, and yet there are fewer and fewer hours of care available. In the Prairie Mountain Health region covered by those documents, there are 1,125 more people seeking care in the last 5 years, but there's nearly 90,000 fewer hours of care available to serve them. It's because home care workers are stretched too thin to give each client the attention they deserve. Will the Premier admit her government's cuts have hurt home care?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the Leader of the Opposition is just plain wrong, Madam Speaker. In fact, we are investing more than $1 billion more than the NDP ever did in our healthcare system, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I also just want to mention and thank the Minister responsible for seniors, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the work that he is doing and working with stakeholders in the community to develop a home care strategy for the province of Manitoba, so we can look at improving home care for those who choose to stay at home and need that extra help at home.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition with a supplementary question.
More Manitobans are looking for home care services so that they can live a good life, so that they can stay in the community, so that they can age in place. Yet we just saw in Western Manitoba and in the Parkland, while there are more than 1,100 more patients, there are 90,000 fewer hours to care for them. The situation is similarly dire in the Southern Health region. The number of people there seeking care has gone up by 340 patients just in the last 5 years, and yet there are 96,000 few hours of care to serve them. That means more people waiting in pain. That means more people having to go up without essential services like meal prep and laundry. It means worse care for Manitobans. Will the Premier please stop cutting home care?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And again, the Leader of the Opposition puts false information on the record in this House. More than $1 billion more than the NDP ever invested in healthcare, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And certainly when it comes to home care and within our healthcare system, we know that there is a shortage of workers right across the system. That is nothing that's unique to Manitoba. The Leader of the Opposition knows that, but he refuses to recognize it, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But it's a reality of what we're facing, not just here in Manitoba, but right across the country when it comes to the shortage of staffing with respect to healthcare and for home care. Mr. Deputy Speaker. So those are challenges that we're taking on. Of course, we're developing that home care strategy, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'll remind Manitobans that the Leader of the Opposition has no plan, no vision whatsoever about home care in the province of Manitoba. If he has one, please table it today.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Let's cut through the PC talking points. These cuts began 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And they are cuts. When a government takes a decision to reduce funding and it results in fewer hours of care at the bedside, that is a cut. We saw that in Westman, there are more than 90,000 fewer hours of care. In the Southern Health Region, and I'll table this document to prove the case, perhaps not to the First Minister, but definitely to the people of Manitoba, there are 96,000 fewer hours of care. We're talking about home care workers who are helping very vulnerable people in our society. As the price of gas goes up, these folks haven't even gotten a mileage increase. We know that the First Minister is not going to cut home care is not going to stop her cuts to home care services, but will she finally increase the mileage rate for
The member's time has expired. The Honourable First Minister. The Honourable First Minister.
Well, the Leader of the Opposition got one thing right, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we are not going to cut home care in the province of Manitoba. Once again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, want to thank the Minister responsible for seniors who is working diligently with stakeholders in the community to ensure that we make improvements to our home care system, something that the NDP never did when they were in power. For 17 years, they did nothing. And the Leader of the Opposition stands in this House, again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, puts false information on the record, and he continues to do that without announcing what his plan is for home care. So again, I ask him, would he table his home care plan for the people of Manitoba? We would like to know what his plan is.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition with a second question.
Manitobans want good online services from Manitoba Public Insurance, and that's why MPI launched Project Nova. It was supposed to make life easier and more convenient for families. Now, this project could have been done a long time ago. That is, if the PCs hadn't interfered. Now we learn from MPI board minutes, which I will table today, that just because of PC interference, the cost of Project Nova is skyrocketing. This document shows that it's going to cost ratepayers more than double the original price. We're talking an increase lately from $128 million to now $300 million. Will the Premier admit that her government's interference will cost drivers more?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I do want to thank all of those who are working diligently at MPI and offering those services for Manitobans. We know that affordability is an issue. MPI stepped up and they actually gave out rebate checks to Manitobans. Right. We want to remind Manitobans it was upwards of $700 per vehicle. That is making life more affordable for Manitobans. I want to thank MPI and the board for moving in that direction to make life more affordable for Manitobans.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Project Nova was supposed to take 2, maybe 3 years tops. Originally, the price tag was named at $82 million. Then, after PC interference, that increased to $128 million. But now, after further interference by this PC government, began under Mr. Pallister, but continuing under this First Minister, we see that the price tag has now ballooned from $128 million to $300 million. And that timeline of a couple years has now been stretched to more than 5 years, Mr. Speaker. A $300 million project over budget at MPI will mean more pressure on ratepayers to make up the difference. Will the Premier tell the House how much MPI rates will go up because of her government's interference?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, I'll remind Manitobans, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of the vehicle registration fee that the NDP interfered in MPI and got them to introduce a vehicle registration fee. And again, on the theme of making life more affordable for Manitobans, we made 3 reductions to that vehicle registration fee, making life more affordable for Manitobans. We want to thank MPI for making that decision, for moving in that direction towards making life more affordable for Manitobans.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Well, as is typical, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we don't see the Premier engage with the question because there is no defense. Just as with the healthcare system, where their mismanagement has made a mess of things, now their mismanagement is costing people more at MPI. This project was already over budget when it was pegged at $128 million. Now we see, because of the meddling of this minister and this first minister, that costs have more than doubled. We're talking about from $128 million to $300 million. That's mismanagement, and it's a result of PC interference. How much more of Manitobans' money will the Premier waste before providing simple online services to the people?
The Honourable First Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the piece of paper that the Leader of the Opposition tabled in the House does not back anything, and it doesn't have anything to do with the questions that he's asking. There's no evidence here to suggest that the accusations from the Leader of the Opposition. But what I will say, when we're talking about interfering in Crown corporations, I'll remind the Leader of the Opposition that when the NDP were in power, the bipole line, the kiosk generating stations, these things were over budget by almost $4 billion. That's what they did. They interfered in Manitoba, created significant cost overruns, which is also making life less affordable for Manitobans. We will continue to make life more affordable for Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The price of Project Nova has more than doubled in price. Initial price was $82 million, then it increased to $128 million, to nearly $300 million now. This project could have been completed a long time ago, but this government interfered. Why is the minister costing MPI drivers more?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
My friend across the way might need to be reminded that drivers' insurance have been continually going down over the last number of years, Mr. Deputy Speaker, not going up. He may also be well to be reminded that this is a 30-year-old legacy system, that the driver's renewal system, the technology system that is in the different brokers and at MPI languished for nearly 20 years under the NDP without any sort of revival or renewal, Mr. Deputy Speaker. If he wants to know why the system is so outdated and why there needs to be such refurbishment, he may want to speak to, for example, one of his colleagues who sat and did nothing for 20 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you,
Order.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Brian Pallister intervened in the operation of MPI on behalf of his friends in the insurance industry. Project Nova was supposed to be done long time ago. Now it has more than doubled in price to nearly $300 million. The time has been delayed. This cost us more. Why did the PC government interfere in the operation of MPI, and why are they costing drivers hundreds of millions of dollars?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, interference would be defined as going to a Crown corporation and saying, instead of building a hydro line on the shortest route possible, as was recommended by many, many experts, including experts in the NDP, Mr. Deputy Speaker, instead having ministers saying, no, we're going to go across the entire length of the opposite side of the province and cost more than $1 billion more, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that would be interference. What the definition of languishing would be is doing nothing to upgrade a computer system, a technology system at MPI for more than 2 decades and then waiting for another government to have to take on that task, Madam Speaker. So that's the definition. He now knows what interference is. He now knows what languishing is. I'm happy to give him further definitions in the next answer, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The government's interference cost us all more. The cost of Project Nova have more than doubled to nearly $300 million. The timeline has been extended for years. Will the minister explain why their government's interference is costing MPI drivers so much more?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, I was reminded by my friends in this side of the House, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about something called FleetNet. I'd almost forgotten. This was the emergency system, of course, that our emergency responders were communicating with across the province where there were fires or other sorts of things. We came into government and we realized that FleetNet was so old that they're having to buy parts off of eBay to keep it going, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, I don't know that MPI was quite that desperate, Madam Speaker. I don't think that... Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't know that they were using Commodore 64 still at MPI, but if the NDP had still stayed in government, that might have been the case, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We had to renew FleetNet, we had to renew MPI computer systems. That's a government that did nothing to ensure that those things were redone. We're not interfering, we're actually trying to get things done. Maybe they could have...
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, climate change is a threat unlike any other we've faced before, and urgent action is needed to avoid the worst outcomes. We've had 6 years of inaction from this government, and they've spent hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars and 2 years fighting the federal government's price on pollution. Thanks to public pressure, the PC government backtracked and committed to developing a carbon pricing plan before December 31st of this year. Will the minister confirm if his government will meet this deadline?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I certainly appreciate a question on climate and environment when it comes from members opposite, Madam Speaker. We know that the NDP climate plan existed on the back of a napkin. We know that how, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Well, none of us have seen it. But I can tell you our government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has a plan. As a matter of fact, we're already moving forward with a low carbon economy fund, efficiency trucking program, Efficiency Manitoba, residential natural gas efficiency programs, $18 million. Mr. Deputy Speaker, stay tuned. I've got more.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a supplementary question.
After losing 2 court cases, widespread public pushback, and wasting hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars, this government finally abandoned their challenge of the federal price on pollution. Nearly a year ago, they committed to developing and implementing a carbon pricing plan by December 31st of this year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know that this government is not fond of deadlines. Fortunately, they still have time to deliver on this one. Will the minister confirm whether a carbon pricing plan will be announced by December 31st of this year?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the member opposite talks about deadlines and pollution. Well, let's look at their record on deadlines. Number one, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We know that one of the largest freshwater lakes in this beautiful country is Lake Winnipeg, just north of us, which I happen to reside on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We know that for almost 20 years, the NDP did nothing on the North End treatment plant in the city of Winnipeg, the largest polluter to Lake Winnipeg and our waterways, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We will take no lessons from the members opposite when it comes to pollution.
The honourable member for Wolseley on a final supplementary.
Manitobans want a government that takes action on climate change and not one that wastes taxpayer money on failed court cases. They also want a government that takes action and doesn't interfere in the building of the North End water treatment plant, as this government did for 6 years. Thankfully, they've abandoned the court appeals after losing 2 cases and pushed back from this side of the House. They've committed to developing a carbon pricing plan, but we have heard nothing. The government has until December 31st of this year. That date is coming quickly. Can the minister confirm whether he will actually meet this deadline?
The Honourable Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And we certainly know that members opposite had no plan. No plan at all, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Zero.
We certainly know that the members opposite, Mr. Deputy Speaker, would never have a plan other than the back of a napkin. Let me tell you, for members of the House, what our government is doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We've increasing the ethanol content in gasoline from 8.5 to 10%, in biodiesel 2.5 to 5%. The efficiency truck program saves 25 million litres, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of GHG emissions over a life cycle of equipment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, they have no plan. We're just getting started.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. My office continues to receive complaints from students about this government's poorly run Manitoba student aid program. Students have faced extreme delays in accessing funding that they need to go to school. This has resulted in students having to pay out of pocket to take on debt as funding for their education because their payments did not arrive before deadlines. This debt is detrimental for students who have already struggling with increasingly high rising costs of living. This government needs to take action to ensure that students receive their funding in a timely manner. Will the minister commit to doing so today?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are continually enhancing our processes and products that includes Manitoba Student Aid. I know that staff are working hard each and every day to ensure that applications and inquiries from clients are addressed in a timely manner. I can share that in 2021-2022, Manitoba Student Aid helped over 16,000 students, including Indigenous students and low-income students, in access to post-secondary education.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
The continuing issues with Manitoba Student Aid are simply unacceptable. I wrote to the minister months ago to share stories of students who have concerns and urged him to take action. In the fall semester, over 200 students had delays with their receiving their student aid. And he had time over the summer to fix it, but he didn't. That's why it's so disappointing to hear that students are now still coming to my office with complaints because they're not receiving their student aid money in time. Students such as a mother of 6 who contacted my office after extreme delays, and now she's considering dropping out of school. The minister should take urgent action on this to resolve problems with Manitoba student aid. Will he do so today?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let me share with the House that during 2021-2022, Manitoba Student Aid provided approximately $217 million in both federal and provincial student loans, grants, and bursaries, including $51.9 million in Manitoba student loans and $19 million in Manitoba bursaries to help post-secondary students receive a high-quality education in Manitoba. The financial supports that our government provides these students will help them not only receive a quality education, but gain the right skills and knowledge to stimulate our growing Manitoba economy. We have a plan. They do not. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't think the minister quite understands how much Manitoba students rely on student aid. That's why these persistent issues when it comes to Manitoba student aid is such a huge issue. Issues like low turnaround time, poor performing website, inadequate phone supports, and general lack of organization with Manitoba student aid are the complaints that I hear all the time from Manitoba students. They reach out to my office over these concerns, and they want to hear action from this minister. They're missing out on thousands of dollars, and it's forcing them to go into debt. Will the minister commit to fixing issues with Manitoba student aid and help students in our province today?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government is providing students with record levels of financial support in the form of scholarships, bursaries, and loans, unlike the previous NDP government, who didn't know how to run a Manitoba student aid system and wasted $15 million on outdated student aid software, resulting in delays in student applications and disbursements of funds. We're still cleaning the mess. They have lack of action. We have a plan of action. They have no plan. We're cleaning up the mess. We're continuing to clean up the mess, and we're going to get it right, unlike the NDP.
Check, check, check.
The honourable member for Kiiwetinoong.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When the Leaf Rapids Health Center's ER closed on July the 13th, residents were told the move was temporary for only 6 days. It's now been more than 2 months, more than 80 days later, and the region is still saying it will be closed for an indeterminate amount of time. Likewise, cuts at Lynn Lake and Snow Lake have resulted in disruptions. Will the minister address and reverse the cuts her government has made to Northern healthcare?
The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, I'm pleased to talk to you about the investments that our government has made in healthcare, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have $50 million that have gone into the HSC Operation Excellence to increase HSC surgical and diagnostic capacity by 25%. I was pleased to be at HSC with the Minister of Health not that long ago for a $750,000 investment to HSC Children's Hospital inpatient monitor upgrades to support 26 inpatient monitor beds. This will enable nurses to spend more time at the bedside, less time monitoring those patients in person, Mr. Deputy Speaker, serving more patients. $2 million for the Swan River CT scanner, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That was very well received in the Swan River area. People were coming up and telling the Premier that they had never anticipated training.
The Honourable Minister's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I did not hear the word north at all in any of that response. Patients are being moved across the north and far from family. My colleague, the member from Thompson, raised the issue of a transfer from Thompson to Flin Flon. At Lynn Lake, all the long-term patients were sent to Flin Flon without notifying family and community. This is an 8-hour drive. This is such an undignified way to treat our seniors. Why won't the minister ensure there is care available for our seniors close to home in the north?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, in order to continue about portions of investment in Manitoba, and not just in Winnipeg, but also in northern Manitoba, we did talk about the Swan River CT scanner, where people were coming up and talking to the Premier, thanking her for this announcement, saying that I had never anticipated training as a CT technician, and now I have that ability to do that, to perform CT scans in Swan River, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we also have $200.5 million in the Russell Cancer Care Site redevelopment. Cancer care in Russell, Mr. Deputy Speaker, something the NDP ignored for many, many years.
The Honourable Member for Kiiwetinoong on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, the minister tried to drop the word north in that answer in some capacity, but there are still less and less surgeons available in the north. Consequently, more and more people have to travel south. Unfortunately, under this government, the Northern Patient Transfer Program is inadequate. We have heard from constituents who have missed appointments because they simply cannot afford the cost of their attending their appointments down south. When will the minister address and reverse the cuts they have made to the Northern Patient Transfer Program?
Yeah.
The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, we've lost count of how many emergency rooms the NDP closed. 20, 30, pick a number, Mr. Deputy Speaker, constantly closing throughout their inactivity. Recently, the Minister of Health was up at a summit in Thompson, listening to healthcare professionals there, listening to the community about things that needed to change, Mr. Deputy Speaker. She's listening. We're getting things done. We know they have no plan whatsoever.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I recently attended the AGM for a women's shelter that runs secondary housing, transitional housing, where women and children escaping violence can stay for up to a year. They're about to mark their 30th anniversary, and for half that time, the last 15 years, their provincial funding has been frozen. How can it be? Given what we know about domestic violence in Manitoba, where women face violent partners at 8 times the national average, and Indigenous women are 2.7 times more likely to be murdered, and when we know things got worse in the pandemic, how can it be that there has been no increase in provincial funding to make sure that women and children have secondary housing to get out of an emergency shelter for this long?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And if the member opposite was paying attention, Budget 2022 did bring in significant increases, as well as a modernization strategy to improve the funding formula for all women's shelters in the province. Our government is also working with women's resource centres, and those providing transitional housing and long-term housing for women who have been fleeing domestic violence and need to have housing. In fact, earlier this year, our government stepped in and worked with the North End Women's Resource Centre after they'd learned that Ottawa, the Liberals in Ottawa, was cutting funding for 8 beds at the North End Women's Resource Centre for transitional housing. That member sat by, he did nothing, he didn't call his friends in Ottawa to ask for that funding to be reinstated.
The
It's this government that
time has
responded.
expired. The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Here are the numbers
please.
which I table from page 91 of the Department of Family's annual report. Since 2019, calls to women's shelter crisis lines have been growing by more than 1,000 per year, but this year funding is $241,000 less than it was 2 years ago. Second stage funding has been frozen at $571,000 every year for the last 3 years. And when it comes to specialized programs, well, the number of clients has soared by 50%. From 2,297 to 3,495, the funding has dropped from 2.5 million to $1.8 million this year. I have people calling me who are desperate for help, who have no place to go. Will the Premier act immediately to increase funding to provide women fleeing domestic violence a safe place with supports, even if it means renting hotel rooms?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government recognizes that intimate partner violence was certainly a shadow pandemic in the last few years. We have seen situations escalate because people were spending more time at home, and that was not a safe environment for a lot of women. That is why we've made significant investments in our women's shelters and our resource centres. That is why we've established permanent funding for hotlines for people to reach out to receive supports. And if the member wants to do something constructive, he can come in this House and he can vote in favour of Budget 2022, which has significant investments and increase in funding for women's shelters and women's initiatives throughout the province.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And today I get the opportunity to ask a question on behalf of the grade 7s from Stanley Knowles School who have joined us here in the gallery today. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these students have many great questions, even what the Premier had for breakfast this morning. They also touched upon issues including how do we get rid of laws that are not working for us? Why do people who immigrate here have to answer such a long test? And what is our province's debt? So based on these topics, I'd like to ask the Premier, what will the future of Manitoba look like?
The Honourable First Minister.
Great question.
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank all of the students who are here today and for the member opposite for asking those great questions on their behalf. So thank you to all of you. I can tell you that the future in Manitoba looks bright because of many of the initiatives that we have taken on this side of the House and our government over the course of the last number of years to make life more affordable for Manitobans, to make life, to also tackle some of the surgical and diagnostic wait lists in the province of Manitoba. These are all the exciting things. And of course, education. Yesterday was World Teachers Day, which was a great thing, and I see your teachers here today. We thank you for the incredible work that you do. But thank you to all of you for being here today.
The First Minister's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Borderlands.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I hate to spoil the fun, but there has been much debate about Bill 36, a lot of it unfortunately focusing on some pretty blatant misrepresentations of the facts. For the sake of this House and members opposite, can the Minister of Finance briefly explain the explanatory note he tabled in the House last week?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, these students from Stanley Knowles and their teachers know the value of reading for comprehension. The NDP has done less well at this. Mr. Deputy Speaker, under the NDP, BIPOL and Kiosk came in almost $4 billion over cost. The debt of Hydro tripled. 40 cents on every dollar now goes to pay bankers, and that puts at risk the fundamental advantage to ratepayers, which has been low rates. And that is why Bill 36 sets Hydro on a path to stability by setting a limit, a cap on the rate of any increase. And the bill reads, the general rate increase for a fiscal year cannot exceed 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less.
The Honourable Minister's time has expired. Order. The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, documents provided to us through FIPA show that despite increasing demand for home care, the number of hours being provided is going down. And I'll table those documents. In Prairie Region, despite more cost and more clients, there are less hours of care being provided. Why are those living in Brandon and Westman paying more for home care while getting nearly 100,000 less hours of care?
The Honourable Minister for Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I share the member's concerns. We are in a process of establishing and reviewing our whole home care strategies to ensure that the needs of Manitobans will be met in the future. And I continually liaison with my colleague, the Minister of Health, and we are looking for input from Manitobans to come to terms with this, and we will be providing solutions.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, home care clients are very, very frustrated. This government is nearing the end of its second term, and they're still requiring input and consultations even at this point. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government's explanations don't add up. 1,000 more people need home care in Westman compared to 5 years ago. The cost of this care is up, but the hours of service delivered is way down. 100,000 less hours of care than what it was 5 years ago. When people say that they can't get the home care they need, that is why, and it's because of this government's cuts. Why is this government cutting home care for Westman residents?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Our increase to the needs of Manitobans regarding health is well documented. We continue to increase the amount of money in terms of things that haven't been done in this province before, and we will continue to do that. As I mentioned, we are certainly studying this question. I, along with the Minister of Health, will continue to do it, and we will find solutions.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame on final supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, instead of increases to home care, what we've heard is increases in workload for less pay and less benefits for home care workers. So we're not hearing from the same folks. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this week we have heard terrible stories from Manitobans not being able to get enough hours of home care. The number of those needing home care continues to climb. In Prairie Region, the hours of care continue to decline while the overall cost has gone up. Why are those living in Brandon and Westman paying more for home care while receiving nearly 100,000 less hours of care? I've tabled the documents for the minister, and I'd like him to address those documents.
Right on.
The Honourable Minister for Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the circumstances that exist basically worldwide is that there is staffing shortages within the healthcare system. And our Minister of Health, supported by our government, is continuing to look for solutions to try to enhance the numbers to support healthcare needs in Manitoba, and we will continue to do that. I mean, the Leader of the Opposition continues to challenge this government in regards to agency staffing to ensure that the needs of Manitoba are met, and yet they criticize the fact that we are trying to find solutions. So, Madam Speaker, we will continue to do
The Honourable
what
Minister's
Manitobans
time has
need.
expired. Time for oral questions has ended. Petitions. The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of this petition is as follows. The Bibliothèque Régionale Jolie has been served notice by the Red River Valley School Division to vacate the premises currently situated in the auditorium of École Heritage School by March 31, 2023. The auditorium was originally built in the 1960s by renowned Manitoba architect Etienne Gaboret and has been home to the JRL for 48 years. A photo of the auditorium captioned "The Regional Library" is published in a 2008 document titled Heritage Buildings in the RM of de Salaberry and St. Pierre-Jolie. It is marked as an important modern building that could attain the status of heritage site. JRL and Red River Valley School Division have flourished from a mutually beneficial memorandum of understanding for 54 years. Their shared collection boasts over 50,000 books and has the fourth largest collection of French language literature in rural Manitoba. Students that are bused in from the neighboring municipalities that do not have a public library, such as Niverville, Grunthil, and Cleefield, are provided with free access to the public library and its fourth largest collection of French books in rural Manitoba during the school year. Therefore, we petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number one, to request the Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services to consider granting the auditorium to the JRL by March 1 of 2023. Number 2, to request the Minister of Education to recognize the value the JRL provides to the student population of EHS as well as the communities of St. Pierre-Joly and the RM of de Salaberry. Number 3, to request the Minister of Education and Minister of Francophone Affairs to recognize that an MOU between the Red River Valley School Division and the JRL is mutually, financially, and culturally beneficial. Number 4, to request the Minister of Sport, Culture, Heritage to recognize the heritage potential of this important building and its status in the community. And number 5, to request the Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage to prevent any renovations to the auditorium that would destroy and devalue the architectural integrity of the building. This petition is signed by Greg Walters, Sarah Ringenico, and Barbara Walters. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas.
Miigwech, Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. The Bibliothèque Regional Jolie Regional Library has been served notice by the Red River Valley School Division to vacate the premises currently situated in the auditorium of École Heritage School by March 31st, 2023. 2. The auditorium was originally built in the 1960s by renowned Manitoba architect Etienne Gabori, and it has been home to JRL for 48 years. 3. A photo of the auditorium captioned, "The Regional Library," is published in a 2008 document titled Heritage Buildings in RM, de Salaberry, and St. Pierre-Joly. It is marked as an important modern building that could attain the status of a heritage site. 4. JRL and RRVSD have flourished from a mutually beneficial memorandum of understanding for 54 years. 5. Their shared collection boasts over 50,000 books and has the 4th largest collection of French language literature in rural Manitoba. 6. Students that are bused in from the neighboring municipalities that do not have a public library, such as Niverville, Grunthal, and Kleefeld, are provided with free access to the public library and its 4th largest collection of French books in rural Manitoba during the school year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. 1. To request the Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection, and Government Services to consider granting the auditorium to the JRL by March 31st, 2023. 2. To request the Minister of Education to recognize the value of JRL provides to the student population of EHS as well as the communities of Village de St. Pierre-Joly and RM de Salaberry. 3. To request the Minister of Education and the Minister of Francophone Affairs to recognize that MOU between the RRVSD and JRL is mutually, financially, and culturally beneficial. 4. To request the Minister of Sports, Culture, and Heritage to recognize the heritage potential of this important building and its status in the community. 5. To request the Minister of Sports, Culture, and Heritage to prevent any renovations to the auditorium that would destroy and devalue the architectural integrity of this building. And this has been signed by Chris Harton, Ryan Cox, Margaret Nivelle, and many other Manitobans.
Honourable Member for Elmwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, over 25,000 vehicles per day cross the Louise Bridge, which has served as a vital link for vehicular traffic between northeast Winnipeg and the downtown for the last 110 years. Number 2, current structure will undoubtedly be declared unsafe in a few years as it has deteriorated extensively, becoming functionally obsolete, subject to more frequent unplanned repairs, and cannot be widened to accommodate future traffic capacity. Number 3, as far back as 2008, the City of Winnipeg has studied where the new replacement bridge should be situated. Number 4, after including the bridge replacement in the city's 5-year capital budget forecast in 2009, the new bridge became a short-term construction priority in the city's transportation master plan of 2011. Number 5, city capital and budget plans identified replacement of the Louise Bridge on a site just east of the bridge and expropriated homes there on the south side of Nairn Avenue in anticipation of a 2015 start. Number 6, in 2014, the new city administration did not make use of available federal infrastructure funds. Number 7, the new Louise Bridge Committee began its campaign to demand a new bridge, and its surveys confirmed residents wanted a new bridge beside the current bridge, with the old bridge kept open for local traffic. Number 8, the NDP provincial government signaled its firm commitment to partner with the city on replacing the Louise Bridge in its 2015 throne speech. Unfortunately, provincial infrastructure initiatives such as the new Louise Bridge came to a halt with the election of the Progressive Conservative government in 2016. Number 9, more recently, the city tethered the Louise Bridge replacement issue to its new transportation master plan and Eastern Corridor project. Its recommendations have now identified the location of the new Louise Bridge to be placed just to the west of the current bridge, not to the east as originally proposed. The city expropriation process has begun. Number 10, the Premier has a duty to direct the provincial government to provide financial assistance to the city so it can complete the long overdue vital link to Northeast Winnipeg and Transcona. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number 1, to urge the new Premier to financially assist the City of Winnipeg on building the 3-lane bridge in each direction to maintain this vital link between Northeast Winnipeg, Transcona, and the downtown. Number 2, to urge the provincial government to recommend that the City of Winnipeg keep the old bridge fully open to traffic while the new bridge is under construction. Number 3, to urge the provincial government to consider the feasibility of keeping it open for active transportation in the future. And this petition is signed by many, many Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for St. James.
Merci. Je désire présenter la pétition suivante à l'Assemblée législative. Le contexte de cette pétition est le suivant. 1. La Bibliothèque régionale Jolie Regional Library a été avisée par la division scolaire Vallée de la Rivière-Rouge de libérer les locaux actuellement situés dans l'auditorium de l'école Heritage School d'ici le 31 mars 2023. 2. L'auditorium a été construit dans les années 1960 par le célèbre architecte manitobain Étienne Gaboury. Le BRG y a été installé depuis 48 ans. 3. Une photo de l'auditorium intitulée La Bibliothèque régionale est publiée dans un document de 2008 intitulé Bâtiments patrimoniaux de Salaberry et Saint-Pierre-Joly. Il est indiqué qu'il s'agit d'un bâtiment moderne important qui pourrait atteindre le statut de site patrimonial. 4. BRG et DSVRR ont prospéré grâce à un protocole d'entente mutuellement bénéfique pendant 54 ans. 5. Notre collection commune compte plus de 50 000 livres et possède la 4e plus grande collection de littérature de langue française dans les régions rurales du Manitoba. 6. Les élèves qui sont transportés par l'autobus des municipalités voisines qui n'ont pas la bibliothèque publique, comme Niverville, Grunthal et Clearfield, ont accès gratuitement à la bibliothèque publique et à sa 4e plus grande collection de livres en français dans les régions rurales du Manitoba pendant l'année scolaire. Nous présentons à l'Assemblée législative du Manitoba la pétition suivante. 1. De demander au ministre du Travail, de la Protection des consommateurs et des services gouvernementaux d'envisager de concéder l'auditorium de BRG d'ici à la 1er mars 2023. 2. Demander au ministre de l'Éducation de reconnaître la valeur que la BRG apporte à la population d'étudiantes de EHS ainsi qu'aux communautés de village de Saint-Pierre-Joly et de la MR de Salaberry. 3. Demander au ministre de l'Éducation et au ministre des Affaires francophones de reconnaître qu'un protocole d'entente entre RRVSD et GRL est mutuellement bénéfique, financièrement et culturellement. 4, demander au ministre des Sports, de la Culture et du Patrimoine de reconnaître le potentiel patrimonial de cet important bâtiment et son statut au sein de la communauté. Et 5, demander au ministre des Sports, de la Culture et du Patrimoine d'empêcher toute rénovation de l'auditorium qui détruirait et dévaloriserait l'intégrité architecturale du bâtiment. Cette pétition a été signée par Carol Baudry, Danny English et Yannick Gauthier.
Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, home care workers in Manitoba provide skilled and compassionate care that helps better the quality of life for thousands of Manitobans. Number 2, robust home care services are proven to reduce the strain on health services and demand for hospital beds. Number 3, home care reduces the demand for long-term care beds as it allows people to continue living in their own space. Number 4, studies show that a third of the 200,000 Canadians living in long-term care homes could stay home with proper home care support. Number 5, investing in home care saves money as daily services cost half the price of a long-term care bed and 1/7 the daily cost of a hospital bed. Number 6, the provincial government's cuts to home care in Manitoba has resulted in chronic staffing issues that caused the WRHA to cancel 27,000 home care appointments in the month of April 2022 alone. Number 7, many clients in Manitoba only receive home care services once a day, whereas other countries such as Denmark offer up to 6 visits a day. Number 8, home care workers in Manitoba are paid poor wages, are offered little benefits, lack sick time, and are overworked, resulting in difficulty retaining and attracting workers. Number 9, home care workers have been without a contract since 2017 due to this provincial government's interference in labor negotiations. Number 10, investing in home care is a proactive approach that would save the province millions of dollars as well as allow more Manitobans to age in place. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Health and the Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care to immediately increase investment in home care services so that home care workers can be paid a fair wage and clients can receive the level of service they require. This has been signed by Cole Barres, Angeli Manois, and Demi Manois, and many other Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. A hearing aid is a battery-powered electronic device designed to improve an individual's ability to perceive sound. Worn in or behind a person's ear, they make some sounds louder, helping people hear better when it's quiet and when it's noisy. People who suffer hearing loss, whether due to aging, illness, employment, or accident, not only lose the ability to communicate effectively with friends, family, or colleagues, they can also experience unemployment, social isolation, and struggles with mental health. Hearing loss can also impact the safety of an individual with hearing loss, as it affects the ability to hear cars coming, safety alarms, call 911, etc. A global commission on the state of the research for dementia care and prevention released an updated consensus report in July 2020, identifying 12 key risk factors for dementia and cognitive decline. The strongest risk factor that was indicated was hearing loss. It was calculated that up to 8% of the total number of dementia cases could potentially be avoided with management of hearing loss. Hearing aids are therefore essential to the mental health and well-being of Manitobans, especially to those at significant risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, a disorder of the brain affecting cognition in the ever-growing senior population. Audiologists are healthcare professionals who help patients decide which kind of hearing aid will work best for them based on the type of hearing loss, patient's age, and ability to manage small devices, lifestyle, and ability to afford. The cost of hearing aids can be prohibitive to many Manitobans depending on their income and circumstances. Hearing aids cost an average of $995 to $4,000 per year, and many professionals say the hearing aids only work at their best for 5 years. Manitoba residents under the age of 18 who require a hearing aid as prescribed by an otolaryngologist or audiologist will receive either an 80% reimbursement from Manitoba Health of a fixed amount for an analog device up to a maximum of $500 per year, or 80% of a fixed amount for a digital or analog programmable device up to a maximum of $1,800. However, this reimbursement is not available to Manitobans who need the device who are over the age of 18, which will result in financial hardship for many young people entering the workforce, students, and families. In addition, seniors representing 14.3% of Manitoba's population are not eligible for reimbursement despite being the group most likely in need of a hearing aid. Most insurance companies only provide a minimal partial cost of a hearing aid, and many Manitobans, especially retired persons, age-old pensioners, and other low-income earners, do not have access to health insurance plans. The province of Quebec's Hearing Devices Program covers all costs related to hearing aids and assistive listening devices, including the purchase, repair, and replacement. Alberta offers subsidies to all seniors, 65 and over, and low-income adults, 18 to 64, once every 5 years. New Brunswick provides coverage for the purchase and maintenance not covered by other agencies or private health insurance plans, as well as assistance for those for whom the purchase would cause financial hardship. Manitobans over age 18 are only eligible support for hearing aids if they're receiving employment and income assistance, and the reimbursement only provides a maximum of $500 a year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. 1, to urge the provincial government to consider hearing loss as a medical treatment under Manitoba Health. 2, to urge the provincial government to provide income-based coverage for hearing aids to all who need them, as hearing loss has proven to be an essential to Manitobans, as hearing has proved to be essential to Manitoba's cognitive, mental, and social health and well-being. Signed by Ron Halbesma, Elizabeth Taves, Ken Wilkes, and many others.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. A hearing aid is a battery-powered electronic device designed to improve an individual's ability to perceive sound worn in or behind a person's ear. They make some sounds louder, helping people hear better when it's quiet and when it's noisy. People who suffer hearing loss, whether due to aging, illness, employment, or accident, not only lose the ability to communicate effectively with friends, family, or colleagues, they also experience unemployment, social isolation, and struggles with mental health. Hearing loss can also impact the safety of an individual with hearing loss, as it affects the ability to hear cars coming, safety alarms, call 911, etc. A global commission on the state of the research for dementia care and prevention released an update consensus report in July 2020 identifying 12 key risk factors for dementia and cognitive decline. The strongest risk factor that was indicated was hearing loss. It was calculated that up to 8% of the total number of dementia cases could potentially be avoided with management of hearing loss. Hearing aids are therefore essential to the mental health and well-being of Manitobans, especially to those at significant risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, a disorder of the brain affecting cognition in the ever-growing senior population. Audiologists are health care professionals who help patients decide which kind of hearing aid would work best for them based on the type of hearing loss, patient's age, and ability to manage small devices, lifestyle, and ability to afford. The cost of hearing aids can be prohibitive to many Manitobans depending on their income and circumstances. Hearing aids cost on average $995 to $4,000 per year, and many professionals say that hearing aids only work at their best for 5 years. Manitoba residents under the age of 18 who require a hearing aid as prescribed by an otolaryngologist or audiologist will receive either an 80% reimbursement from Manitoba Health or a fixed amount for an analog device up to the maximum of $500 per year, or 80% of a fixed income amount for a digital or analog programmable device up to a maximum of $1,800.
However, this reimbursement is not available to Manitobans who need the device who are over the age of 18, which will result in financial hardships for many young people entering the workforce. Students and families, in addition, seniors representing 14.3% of Manitoba's population, are not eligible for reimbursement despite being the group most likely in need of hearing aids. Most insurance companies only provide a minimal partial cost of a hearing aid, and many Manitobans, especially retired persons, old age pensioners, and other low-income earners, do not have access to health insurance plans. The province of Quebec's hearing device program covers all costs related to hearing aids and assisted listening devices, including the purchase, repair, and replacement. Alberta offers subsidies to all seniors 65 and over and low-income adults 18 to 64 once every 5 years. New Brunswick provides coverage for the purchase and maintenance not covered by other agencies or private health insurance plans, as well as assistance for those whom the purchase would cause financial hardship. Manitobans over age 18 are only eligible for support for hearing aids if they are receiving employment and income assistance, and the reimbursement only provides a maximum of $500 an year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to consider hearing loss as a medical treatment under Manitoba Health, and to urge the provincial government to provide income-based coverage for hearing aids to all who need them, as hearing has been proven to be essential to Manitobans' cognitive, mental, and social health and well-being. This petition has been signed by many Manitobans.
Are there any other petitions? Seeing none, we will move along. Grievances. Orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to announce that the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development will meet on Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 at 6 p.m. to consider the following: Bill number 233, the Engineering and Geoscientific Professions Amendment Act, and Bill 237, the Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act, popping number plates.
It has been announced by the Honourable Government House Leader that the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development will meet on Wednesday, October 12th at 6 p.m. to consider Bill 233, the Engineering and Geoscientific Professions Amendment Act, and Bill 237, the Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act, poppy number plates. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In cooperation with the Honourable Opposition House Leader, I am pleased to table the revised estimates order.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, would you be so kind as to resolve the House into Committee of Supply?
It has been announced by the Honourable Government House Leader that the House will resolve into the Committee of Supply. Mr. Deputy Speaker, please take the chair.
Honorable Minister Lachimodia, can you hear us?
Can you say something?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect. So same thing as yesterday, we'll acknowledge you when you raise your hand, and then we know you're ready.
Okay, and then you can gavel us in.
One or two.
Just,
And then I read
yeah.
Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber, and I would ask the minister and critic to please introduce their staff in attendance. As previously agreed, questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The honorable member from Quatnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of continue on where we left off yesterday, the minister had spoken about, and this is in regards to the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation unmarked graves cemetery issue that we'd spoken about yesterday. The minister had mentioned that they played an intermediary role, and was also led to believe that that was in fact a neutral position to perhaps just kind of be the go-between. But the minister also made reference to the fact that they were forced into the intermediary role when the landlord and the landowner informed the department that he would not grant access as promised. And as such, the minister just kind of forwarded information along. I'm just wondering, can a minister say that in an intermediary role, was that a neutral position, or was there advocacy to the landlord on behalf of Sioux Valley?
The honorable, is he ready? The Honorable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we were saying yesterday, this was a very sensitive situation, and the department has worked closely with both the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation and the landlord, as well as departments across government, to support protection of the children's graves. However, the landlord, though agreeing to allow access on September 23rd, notified the department staff that he had changed his mind, and staff attempted to re-engage and negotiate, but the landlord was unwilling to entertain access and unwilling to notify Sioux Valley of his decision. The government continues to support the community in the identification, investigation, the protection, and commemoration of Indian residential schools and burial sites.
The Honorable Member from Kwatnik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, the minister referred to the fact that his department had, and I quote here, brokered an agreement between Sioux Valley and the landowner. And I'm just wondering, I'm hearing then that in fact agreement was broken by the landlord, and I'm just wondering if the province and the minister's department has a consequence for the landlord for breaking that agreement.
The Honorable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the sensitivity of this situation, at this time it would be inappropriate for us to comment further on any actions that can be taken or may be taken by the provincial government. Manitoba does continue to co-develop multi-jurisdictional approaches to find, memorialize, and protect missing children through distinction-based engagements with regional Indigenous organizations and the Council.
The Honorable Member from Kwatnik.
So then I'm led to understand that the minister is in fact just straight out not going to tell us what they're going to do. So I also assume then that also means no advocacy on behalf of Sioux Valley, because that was basically the premise of the question, is what kind of advocacy and what kind of consequence would there have to a deal that the province brokered, that the department brokered, to allow Sioux Valley Dakota Nation to be able to actually search the site for unmarked graves that has been identified, by the way. So I'm hearing then from the minister that they're not going to share that information with anything that's going to be done, if at all anything is in fact going to be done. There was also correspondence put forward to Sioux Valley from the government, where the province is going to advocate that Canada take a stronger role in resolving this issue, and that they find a path to acquire the land to support the search. I'm just wondering, does the minister also have a role to play there, or feel he has a role to play there to help acquire this land and support this search for Sioux Valley Dakota Nation?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, I want to stress for the record that this is a very complex and sensitive situation, and we don't want to jeopardize the ongoing discussions. We acknowledged yesterday that we have taken two discussions with all levels of government, including the City of Brandon. We continue to explore all avenues available. As you will know, the TRC Calls to Action 75 calls upon the federal government to work with provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to develop and implement strategies and procedures related to burial sites. As such, we will take an approach that is consistent with the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action 75. The searches are a complex process, and we recognize that a multifaceted Indigenous-led approach is required, involving the collaboration of various levels of government.
Honourable member from Quatnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I'm hearing that the minister and his department are basically taking a wait and see what everybody else does approach first, and kind of be the last ones to the table to be able to bring forth these issues. And again, not work collaboratively, but rather expect everybody else to come to the table, and the province be the last ones to the table, including some of the correspondence that's going back and forth where the government has invited chief and council to, quote, use their voice and call Canada to take responsibility. But also, I guess the question that a lot of communities have, and in this case, the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation has, is that the provincial government should also be using their voice to advocate on their behalf. And it seems like it's actually the opposite. And the advocacy is not taking place for the community to help with this situation. And understanding, and I mean the minister has mentioned many times, it is a sensitive issue, a sensitive topic, but at the same time, it's a topic that needs to be discussed. And you can't simply hide behind the fact that it's a sensitive issue and then try to avoid responsibility, because there is a responsibility by the federal government and provincial government to deal with this issue of unmarked graves, and in this case, the brand new residential school cemetery site. It's an issue that's been raised many, many times by Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. And it seems like it is. It's being passed back and forth between federal, provincial responsibility, and that's again kind of the way governments have also always looked at First Nations issues, especially here in Manitoba. They bounced it back and forth between federal and provincial responsibility. So it's unfortunate that this government and this minister is taking the wait and see approach. Wait and see what somebody else does first, and then maybe we'll participate at that point in time rather than taking a lead. That being said, I just wanted those words on the record in regards to the issue with Sioux Valley Dakota Nation and Brandon Indian Residential School cemetery site. I do have a question now to kind of switch gears on that, is about Northern Affairs. The review of the Northern Affairs program cost $500,000. I'm just wondering if the minister identified any issues in this report, and when are you going to act on any recommendations, if any?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chair. And once again, the member opposite has chosen to misrepresent the actions of this government on the record. And this is disrespectful to all those who are working so hard to work towards resolving this issue. And I would like to state for the record that Sioux Valley did tell me when the NDP were in government, they reached out to that government at that time and asked them for support to search the burial grounds in Brandon, and were flat out turned away. So, you know, the NDP have no plan. They've never had a plan, and they never will have a plan to work with First Nations with respect to these burial grounds. of a solution. We have communicated that collectively to Sioux Valley, Dakota Nation, along
Sorry
with
to
Canada.
interrupt, Honourable Minister. Your audio cut out there for about 20 seconds, so if we could back up a little bit as to what you were saying there, so we could hear you again.
Okay, sorry for that. You hearing me okay now?
We can hear you now. It was about 20 seconds ago.
Okay, so what was stated, in fact, was that our department staff have taken a leadership role in coordinating a collaborative identification of a solution, and we have communicated that collectively to Sioux Valley, Dakota Nation, along with Canada.
The honourable member from Kwatanik.
Okay, thanks for sharing your talking points about the whole man with the plan kind of knowledge there. But I also ended off that previous question with the review of the Northern Affairs program that cost $500,000. And I'm just wondering if the minister could identify any issues in this report and if you're going to act on any recommendations and when.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you once again, and the issues or recommendations of the report cannot be released due to cabinet confidence.
The Honourable Member from Kwatanik.
What is the current vacancy rate in the Northern Affairs program?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the member clarify for me, is he talking about the entire department or just the Northern Affairs?
The Honourable Member from Kwatanik.
Well, I guess we'll say the entire department.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As of today, there are a total of 15 vacancies and we continue to do what we can to actively recruit to fill these positions.
Are there any further questions? See not, we will go ahead with the resolutions. The last item to be... Resolution 19.2, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $29,114,000 for Indigenous reconciliation and Northern relations, Indigenous and Northern relations for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Okay. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 19.1A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 19.1. If necessary, at this point, we request that all ministerial and opposition staff leave the chamber for the consideration of this last item. The floor is open for questions. If a motion comes,
Floor is open for questions. Yep. Recognize the
honorable member from Kuwaitan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that line item 19.1A be amended so that the Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations salary be reduced to $21,000.
It has been moved by the honorable member from Kuwaitan that line item 19.1A be amended so that the Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations salary be reduced to $21,000.
The seconder is the member for Transcona.
Seconder is the member from Transcona.
Motion is in order and the debate can proceed.
Motion is in order and the debate can now proceed. The honorable member from Kuwaitan.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is about affordability and being able to take home a paycheck when others may not be able to take home anything. So I think it's the right thing to do. So this minister and this government cannot take home a salary that's unfair to the rest of Manitobans. And I think they need to truly lead by example. And leading by example would mean, in fact, to actually take your own pay cut and take your own reduction in pay. You can't lead a department and expect others to follow, expect the Manitobans to kind of do their part to help us all, and at the same time take home a larger piece of the pie for yourselves. And including this goes back to when Brian Palliser kind of circumvented the rules here a little bit and got himself a pay raise by that way. I'd also like to thank the minister for the engagement here over the last little while during estimates, and I realize I'm not able to share certain things, but I would like to point out that the minister talked about engagement just with us, meaning the opposition, and why we didn't come up to his office and have dialogue on a number of different issues. And I know I really can't say whether a member is present or not present here in the chamber, but there is an opportunity to actually, and we do have that opportunity to sit face to face here in the chamber on a daily basis, or we can do that via Zoom. And I feel that attending in person is really something that's beneficial to us all. It's something that we did our sacrifices during the pandemic so that we could actually get back to face and have that real communication go back and forth. And others choose to do that on Zoom because they choose to not be accountable and to not really take into consideration the back and forth and really get the feel of the room and the feel of the issues. And there's been a number of occasions where it may or may not have been health related to choose to participate in Zoom or choose to participate in person. But I truly believe that in person is the best way to have this communication, including during the estimates process. And I'm sure Indigenous people here in Manitoba, when they participate and they go through this estimates process in QP, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So, good.
Any other members wishing to speak in debate of the motion? Seeing none. Shall the motion pass? All those in favor say yea.
All those opposed say nay.
All those opposed say nay. In my opinion, the nays have it.
Recognize member for Coatnick.
Recognize member, oh, sorry. Just think what you're telling me. Honorable member from Coatnick.
On division.
The motion is defeated on division.
The motion is defeated on division.
We shall go to the last resolution.
We shall now go to the last resolution. Resolution 19.1. Resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $1,979,000 for Indigenous reconciliation and Northern relations, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations. The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the Committee of Supply is for the Department of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration. Shall we briefly recess to allow the Minister and critic the opportunity to prepare for the commencement of the next department? All right.
It's agreed, we will take a short recess.
It's agreed, we will take a short recess.
Hello, Minister. Can you hear me? John, I cannot hear you if you're talking. I'm just going to ask the tech people to make sure that they've unmuted you. Hey, tech guys, is the minister's unmuted at our end? John, I'm there.
I can hear. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. I can hear you now. Are you ready to start?
I am ready there, Mr. Chair.
Jamie, you ready? Okay, let's do this. Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
I do not.
We thank the Minister for those comments. Does the official opposition critic have an opening statement? No. We thank the critic for those remarks. Under Manitoba practice, debate on the Minister's salary is the last item considered for a department. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line 44.1, subsection A, contained in Resolution 44.1. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber, and I would invite the Minister and critic to please introduce their staff in attendance. You guys are welcome to invite your staff in if you have anyone. You're welcome to if you'd like to. And Minister, do you have staff with you you'd wish to introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. Along with myself, I have my Deputy Minister, Eric Chirag, my Assistant Deputy Minister, Finance and Corporate Services, Melissa Valentine, and my Assistant Deputy Minister for Immigration, Carmel Chitron.
Thank you, Minister. Would the critic like to introduce any staff? No? Okay, they'll be here shortly, no problem. In accordance with Sub-Rule 77, Subsection 16, during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner, with questions put on the resolutions. Once the official opposition critic indicates that questioning has concluded, the floor is now open for questions. The honourable member for St. Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the government working on new tuition fee policies currently?
Minister, if you could give me a wave, the reason being that the tech people at our end mute your mic. So just give me a wave before you start talking, and I'll recognize you, and then we'll unmute you at the technical end here. So get my attention somehow, and then you can go ahead. Did you want to speak now, Minister? Honourable Minister?
Mr. Chair, I will respond once I raise my hand.
Please go ahead, Honourable Minister. You've muted your mic, Minister.
He said he will respond when he raises his hand.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I know that the critic had asked me a question with respect to. Can you repeat the question? I just got. Sorry, we were just talking there so much.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
Is the government working on new tuition fee policy currently?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we are working on that. We've completed some consultations, and we are working on doing those efforts.
Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We can't really make out what you're saying, or I can't. Do you have a headset or something that you can plug in, or are you able to come down here?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Minister.
Yes, but the response to the critic was yes. We are working. There has been consultation that has been completed that we're working on.
Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I cannot hear you clearly. You need to either plug in a microphone or just come down to the chamber, and we've got everything set up here that works great.
He needs a headset.
I'll put on my headset.
Yes.
Can you hear me better, Mr. Chair?
Better.
I believe so. Let's try that again. Why don't you go ahead and answer the question about tuition? The Honourable Minister.
Yes, it is being worked on. Consultations have been completed, and we are continuing to engage.
He said the consultations are completed. I would like to know when the new tuition policy would be announced or published, and will that be done before the start of the next school year in September 2023?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank all post-secondary partners and Manitobans for participating in the consultation process regarding the future tuition fees and student fees policy in Manitoba. Throughout our consultations, we heard from our post-secondary partners, faculty and student associations, students and other Manitobans. Their feedback and input has been invaluable toward informing the development of a policy. The future policy will consider the balance between student affordability, tuitional sustainability, and fiscal responsibility. We look forward to continue working with our partner to develop a flexible and responsive policy that will ensure that quality post-secondary education remains accessible and affordable for Manitoba students.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you for the response. I'd like to get more clarity on when the new policy would be announced. So would that be in time before the next 2023 school year? So that's September 2023. Would it be earlier to give perhaps students more time to plan on what the tuition changes would be and how it would impact them? When is the minister going to provide this information, since he's already said that the consultations are complete?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The department is in the process of developing the policy based on the consultation feedback and a jurisdictional scan of tuition fees, student fees, and policies across Canada. The department intends to submit the draft policy for governmental approval in December of this year, which is pretty soon, and for implementation early 2023.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
So just to clarify, you said it would be December, and what would be in December? And then it would be announced in early 2023, meaning first quarter, January, February, March of 2023? Just wanted to clarify that. Or perhaps before the end of February, if you could be more specific.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to let my critic know that the letters go out to the post-secondary institutions in around the end of January, beginning of February, and implementation begins the start of the school year in the fall of 2023.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Thank you. Does the minister and the government still support the creation of performance-based funding models for universities and colleges?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our patients have told us they want to demonstrate how they are helping students succeed, and will continue to work with us as we move forward to improve outcomes over time. Based on the Auditor General Report of 2020, it states, better accountability of PSIs on behalf of Manitoba taxpayers. Through consultations, our PSIs are in agreement and understand that they have a role to play to satisfy the report of the Auditor General, and that's why consultations are ongoing.
Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Okay, so the consultations are still ongoing, as the minister just said, for performance-based funding. If that's correct, so it means he's supporting the idea of performance-based funding. If I can understand that's correctly what the minister is saying, that he supports the idea of performance-based funding model for universities and colleges, and the consultation for that, the implementation of that plan is still ongoing. Is that correct?
The Honourable Minister.
No, that's not what I stated. I've stated that the introduction of a framework is consistent with calls from the Office of the Auditor General's 2020 report on oversight of post-secondary institutions for publicly funded universities and colleges. The recommendations include developing a modern framework with defined performance benchmarks and stronger reporting requirements, which the post-secondary institutions are in agreement with, and we are consulting with them, and they understand that they have a role to play with regards to the report.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
So is the system that the minister is describing one in which performance measures would be set out for universities and colleges, and based on whether those universities and colleges meet those performance measures, funding for that institution would be tied to how those measurements are met. Is that the process that the minister has just described?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No funding decisions have been made. This is an accountability framework exercise, and we're looking to develop accountability framework metrics that will satisfy everyone involved, and most importantly, for the Manitoba taxpayer.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
So the accountability framework that you're describing, does that include any performance metrics for colleges and universities?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, can you have my critic repeat the question, please?
The Honourable Member for St. Vital to repeat the question.
Accountability framework that you just mentioned, Minister, does that include any performance metrics that is tied to funding for colleges or universities?
Minister, were you? Yep. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our framework will be incorporating best practices from models developed by other jurisdictions and feedback from post-secondary stakeholders in Manitoba. No decisions have been made as of yet. We're consulting. We're determining with what the framework will be. We're consulting to explore models with all PSI stakeholders, and we'll propose a model on a new accountability framework when these are completed.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you. In the minister's last response, not the most recent, but the second last response, he mentioned that one of the primary goals was to ensure that it was satisfactory for taxpayers. I also want to just throw to the minister that perhaps he should be keenly aware that students in Manitoba should be a main focus when it comes to funding framework. The health and success of our institutions should be also a key part of that, a primary objective of satisfying, as well as the faculty who work at all these institutions. And I think that if the minister is creating a framework with the key objective of satisfying taxpayers only, it misses out quite a bit of very, very critical stakeholders like students, faculty, and the administration themselves. So I'll put that to the minister that he should perhaps keep that in mind if he's creating new accountability framework without having some of the key stakeholders as top priorities. So this accountability framework, which I think is clearly geared towards a model that includes some performance-based measure for universities and colleges, will this accountability framework, as the minister puts it, will that be ready by September 2023?
The Honourable Minister.
I think that my critic, I've mentioned many times in the House, and he knows as well, and he should know. But you know what? It's not surprising they probably don't have a plan. They'll never have a plan. But we have consulted with students. Their feedback is especially insightful. We consulted also with faculty associations. We had excellent feedback. So for him to say that we didn't consult with other stakeholders, it's very, very, I guess, the critic can think of the way he wants, but, our government is working hard for the taxpayer to include all stakeholders, including students. Again, their feedback was very insightful, and the faculty associations as well. So they provide excellent feedback. And again, no decisions has been made yet, but what I can tell you that we're consulting to explore models with all PSI stakeholders, and including the feedback that we got from students and faculty associations on a new accountability framework with when these are all completed.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you. I never said the minister hadn't consulted with those groups. I just wanted to make sure the minister listens to those groups and really hears their feedback. I did want to just get further clarity on the time frame of this framework. Will it be implemented for the 2023 school year? That's the start of September 2023 school year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are improving our accountability system for post-secondary institutions as part of the action plan in the Manitoba Skills, Talent, and Knowledge Strategy. It's a very important document. I don't know if the critic has read that document. Again, the introduction of the framework is consistent with the calls from the Office of the Auditor General 2020 report on oversight of post-secondary institutions for publicly funded universities and colleges. Recommendations include developing and monitoring a framework with defined performance benchmarks and stronger reporting requirements. This will ensure that our investment in post-secondary institution is achieving the intended results and that post-secondary education is aligned with government priorities. Universities and colleges have a role to play in shaping the new framework, and that's why we've been in constant engagement with them. They have provided constructive feedback on critical aspects for a new accountability system. We'll continue to engage with our post-secondary stakeholders to work toward our vision for a high-quality education system that prepares Manitobans for lifelong success, including students and faculty associations and other stakeholders that are pertinent. Our framework will incorporate best practices from models developed, again, by other jurisdictions, and feedback from post-secondary stakeholders in Manitoba.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Since the minister is undertaking so much work with this project, I think Manitobans, specifically students, would like to get a sense of what the time frame looks like on when these changes would arrive. I would think that if the minister is so positive on the plan, that he'd be pretty reticent to want to share at least a ballpark of when Manitobans can expect the new plan to roll out. So will this be announced and be ready for the start of the September 2023 school year?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very important to know that we get this done right, and that's the reason why we've been consulting with all stakeholders. We know that advanced education in this province is very crucial after a post-pandemic period. The metrics that we collect and that will be done will be done in a fashion where it will be done properly to ensure that the framework will respect the autonomy, size, and diversity of our colleges and universities. That's why no decisions have been made with respect to the metrics, but that's the reason why we're engaging with post-secondary institutions and stakeholders that are pertinent to this framework.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
I recently met with faculty members from the University of Manitoba. They organized an event to discuss topics like performance-based funding, tuition fees, differential tuition fees, and one of the common, I would say almost universal thoughts on this were that they're quite frankly not necessary. That they would, if implemented, would make the post-secondary system in Manitoba worse off. So my question is, the minister said that he has consulted with faculty. What did they tell him about this plan? What was their feedback about these initiatives that the minister is proposing?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank faculty associations for their recent participation and contributions during our formal consultations on a new tuitions and student fees policy on a post-secondary accountability framework. Our department appreciates all faculty associations' level of engagement and encourage its members to remain active on matters of importance to Manitoba's post-secondary education system. At my department, we look forward to working with faculty associations and its members again in the future.
The honourable member for St. Patel.
So faculty members told me loud and clear that this type of initiative that would include performance metrics for funding, that would include differential tuition fees, would be a resounding negative impact on our universities. And I want to know whether the minister got this message as well, if this was what came out of his consultation meetings, and what the minister says about that response to the framework that he's currently working on.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to let my critic know that consultations are ongoing. We need to get, very important stakeholders involved, including Indigenous groups. We have to listen to all views. But again, I want to thank, the participation of faculty associations and students for their contributions during our formal consultations on this new tuition fees and student fees policy, which will bring on a new post-calendar framework. The department appreciates their participation, and we'll continue to listen to all views.
The honourable member for St. Patel.
Thank you. So I just want to know if the minister can provide a little more clarity or detail there, because all the meetings that I've had on this topic, from including students and from administration as well as faculty members, have been a resounding no to these proposals. And it's odd to me that the minister seems to be moving forward with this when there's a resounding large amount of pushback on this idea. And so I would really love some clarity and to give the minister an opportunity to prove why this change is necessary and why he's continuing to move forward with this plan when there seems to be a large amount of opposition to it. And because I'd really love to just get as to why we are making this change. I don't think that's been clearly explained to many faculty or students, or quite frankly, even members in this chamber, people in Manitoba, why these changes are needed. So I'd really like to get a sense of why this is. Minister claims that accountability is needed. Accountability can be achieved in many ways without going to differential tuition. Accountability can be achieved without going towards performance-based funding. So if the minister wants to achieve accountability, he can do so without bringing in these initiatives. My question is, why does the minister feel the need to bring in performance metrics, differential tuitions, when it is clearly, according to the experts and the people most impacted in our post-secondary system, would be a resounding negative into our post-secondary education system? Why does the minister push forward with this?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clearly, I say again, clearly, the critic has not read the Office of the Auditor General report with respect to post-secondary accountability framework. At these meetings that he has supposedly heard, clearly, and I say again, clearly, they've all said accountability is important to all those stakeholders. So I recommend that the I strongly suggest that the critic read the report of the Office of the Auditor General so that he can familiarize himself on why accountability is important from the people that he heard at these meetings and that my department has heard.
The honourable member for St. Patel.
Can the minister just give me answer a factual question for me? How much has tuition increased for students at universities since 2016?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I can tell the critic, my critic, that the average tuition in Manitoba is just around a bit over $5,000 with a provincial contribution of 39.2% to PSI revenue. If we compare our numbers with British Columbia, which is governed by the NDP government of BC contributes 32.4% to post-secondary institutions revenue, 6.6% less than Manitoba, while the average tuition is almost 20% higher in BC as compared to Manitoba. So our government is committed to investing more in post-secondary while keeping tuition one of the lowest in Canada. And he's heard that time and time again because it is factual.
The honourable member for St. Patel.
Thanks. I asked the minister how much university has increased for students since 2016. If he's not able to provide the number for me now, can he endeavor to get the specific numbers from tuition in 2016 versus tuition in 2022?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to state some stats from Stats Canada with regards to undergraduate students, the average tuition. As I stated, while Manitoba is just averaging just over $5,000, in Nova Scotia, it's actually $9,000. Our neighbor next door, Saskatchewan, it is $8,500. Even PEI, which is a smaller province than Manitoba, is just over $7,000. Alberta is $6,500. British Columbia, $6,100. Ontario, $8,000. The Canadian average is $6,700. But ours in Manitoba is $5,000 for the average tuition for an undergraduate student here in Manitoba.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
I mean, I'm sure that the minister would have the figures on the average tuition for students since his government's been in office since 2016 till now. I'm sure they have that information. I'm wondering if they can share it with us. I don't see what his hesitation is, why he can't agree to take that on to provide both the tuition increases from 2016 to now for universities as well as for colleges. If the minister is so confident that his tuition rates are low, then I don't think there would be any hesitation to sharing the figures over the several years if he's very confident in its affordability offer. So I ask the minister just one more time if he can provide the average tuition for university and colleges in Manitoba since 2016 up until 2022.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when it comes to affordability, I don't know if the critic heard me. The average tuition for an undergraduate student in Manitoba is just over $5,000. Nova Scotia, $9,000. Our government is committed to ensuring Manitobans have access to higher education. We're finding a balance between affordability, institutional sustainability, and quality education. That's why these consultations are very important, not only with our post-secondary institutions, but our faculty associations and our students. Their feedback has been very insightful, which has been really good engagement with everyone to ensure that we meet the objectives of the report of the Office of the Auditor General, which the critic has not read.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't understand why the minister is accusing me of not reading a document I never said I didn't read. I don't know where that's coming from, Minister. I'll put to the minister. I also want to say that I think it's very telling he doesn't want to share his tuition data over the last record of this government. It doesn't matter what the current, in many respects, it's regardless of what the current tuition is, because I'm asking about whether it's increased over time. Manitoba students who started their programs 4 years ago are paying significantly more now. That increase is a huge difference in the lives of Manitoban students. It makes them question whether they want to have a career here, an educational career here in Manitoba, whether they want to stay here or whether they want to go to another province. That increase in tuition is what I was asking the minister about. And maybe he did not understand me. That's why I had to ask it 3, 4, and now set 2, 3, and now I'm on the 4th time of asking this question. Whether the minister could provide me what the increase in tuition is. Does he have a problem understanding what I'm asking? I asked him about the increase in tuition, not the current tuition. And yes, I have read the document. The minister does not need to put false information on the record. Now, I want to move on to a different question. I would love to move on to a different question, but I'd love the minister even more to answer my question about how much tuition for colleges and universities has increased since 2016.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, during the dark days of the NDP, with regards to advanced education and post-secondary, they took an ideological approach, neglect. We, since 2016, have been cleaning up their mess. And that's why the report came out. The report came out that the Auditor General has recommended that we have metrics to ensure accountability that all our stakeholders have agreed upon. A report that the critic allegedly has read or not read. So I don't know why he's so offensive when it comes to that. But the thing is, we're cleaning up the mess and we're ensuring that we meet the information that was put onto that report of the officer of the Auditor General.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you. Is the minister interested? Is the minister considering reinstating public provided health care for international students?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, all summer I've been meeting with many folks, and I'm sure the critic has too as well. I met with many international students from many countries: Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, China. And you know, one thing, you know, I'm always eager and excited to meet them because these are highly likely future Manitobans, because they like to come here because first of all, number one is they actually have connections here. They say, the reason why I came here is because, you know, I have friends here that go to these post-secondary institutions like the University of Manitoba, Assiniboine Community College, Banner University. Number two, the great programs. Number three, affordability, the low tuition costs. That's what they tell me as the minister. The tuition costs are lower than other jurisdictions. I can't afford to go to British Columbia or Ontario. I decided to come to Manitoba because they have a pathway. They have a pathway with regards to, you know, coming here as an international student and then, you know, streamlining into our provincial nominee program that a PC government created in 1998. Maybe I remind him. So these are individuals that are very important to Manitoba because they are studying here. We offer low tuition rates, the reasons why they're coming here. And with regards to him asking me about the question on international student healthcare, I would ask him to ask that question to the Department of Health.
The honourable member for St. Fertel.
Thank you for the response, Minister. I think many international students are watching this. They're paying attention. This is their health, their livelihood on the line. And so I know that the Minister, as he explained, cares deeply for international students. And I urge him to, if this is something that he supports, if he supports the idea that international students should be back on the provincial healthcare plan, then I encourage him to say so today and to encourage his health minister to reinstate them if it is in her department's responsibility. Be clear about it. International students are watching this. Tell them that you support the idea of having them back on their on the provincial healthcare plan, and tell them that you're going to support advocating for them to the health minister to get them reinstated onto the provincial healthcare plan. I'd like to hear that from the minister, and if he can't do that, please explain to international students why he's not able to do that.
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this week there has been a lot of religious festivals and holidays, including Navratri, and I want to wish international students from India, those of the Hindu faith, a happy Navratri. I met with Needy the other day, 2 days ago, and again, what I just said there, she told me, like I asked her, from India to Manitoba, why are you studying in Manitoba? Because I'm always curious. I always ask these questions. And again, she told me because she had a friend here, she had a friend connection here, she had a family connection here, and the low tuition costs and the programs that we offer at our fine post-secondary institutions here in Manitoba. And she's aware, and I don't know if the critics are aware, because I've said this many times, that when international students, as part of their tuition enrollment, they have healthcare coverage, and they will receive the same benefits as domestic students once they enroll in their healthcare benefits. But again, I want to tell Needy and all the students from India, because it is Navratri this week, those of the Hindu faith, one of our largest source countries for immigration. I believe they are #1 at this time. Happy Navratri, and thank you for choosing Manitoba because of the low tuition cost here in our great province of friendly Manitoba.
The honourable member for St. Fertel.
International students in Manitoba pay the highest for their private health insurance out of any international students in the country. That's a fact. And the minister's inability to see this as a problem, or at least his inability to work to solve this problem, is frustrating. Because regardless of tuition, the levels of tuition in Manitoba, international students have to pay for that health care. They have to pay the highest amount for private health care for international students in the country here in Manitoba, because the minister's government refused to allow them to be on the provincial health care plan, a change that happened under this government's watch in 2018. Ministers made no commitments to reinstating them today when given the opportunity. I'd like to give the minister an opportunity to change course again, to benefit the thousands of international students here who are calling to be reinstated on the provincial health care plan. Because, quite frankly, in addition to having to pay out of pocket for the private health care plan, the services, if they need health care services, the international students have to pay up front for those services before getting reinstated by their insurance plan. In addition, healthcare service providers are often unsure about whether they qualify for healthcare services. So many students are leery and unsure about going to get services in the first place. And that leads to worse healthcare outcomes. It leads to worse healthcare outcomes. And why would we ever want to put our students in that sort of a position? So I'll ask the minister, what is he actually going to do to take this issue seriously? Is the minister going to consider pushing for international students to be reinstated on the provincial healthcare plan?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know, I guess the member did not hear me the first time, but I'll explain again maybe more in detail. Since January 2022, I've had many discussions with hundreds of international students from countries like Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, China, Nigeria, and all across the globe who choose Manitoba as their top destination to study. And the common theme in their discussions is that our low tuition and our affordable living costs in Manitoba are the fundamental reasons for students to choose Manitoba. The average, in comparison to tuition cost, the average tuition in Manitoba for an international student is just under $18,000 versus Nova Scotia is $20,000, neighboring Saskatchewan $22,000, NDP governed British Columbia is $30,000, Ontario is $42,000, the Canadian average is $33,000. Again, our average international tuition for undergraduates is just under $18,000.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Has the minister done any analysis on the impact of cutting healthcare support for international students? And the analysis I'm asking about is, would that be for perhaps healthcare outcomes, or rather economic impact as a result of the cut of healthcare services for international students?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to ensure that all international students, that they have healthcare coverage in Manitoba as part of their tuition enrollment, and that, health, again, doesn't fall under my purview. And he can ask the question to the Department of Health with regard to that. But let me tell international students again that they have healthcare coverage in Manitoba as part of their tuition enrollment. And again, on behalf of the province of Manitoba, thank you for choosing friendly Manitoba to study because of our low tuition rates that I've heard since I became minister for this portfolio in January 2022.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know in previous, what was known as Bill 33, the Advanced Education Administration Amendment Act, there was a section around determining fees for university students. And I'm not talking about for student unions, I'm talking about non-student union related fees. There's the ability for the department, the minister, to create regulation on student fees for university students. Is the minister planning on making a change to that regulation, and would that be for this year or next year? Is he doing any work on that part for student fees, and specifically ones that are not related to student unions?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the member, my critic, for that question. I want to thank all post-secondary partners and Manitobans for having participated in our consultation process regarding the future tuition fees and student fees policy in Manitoba. Throughout our consultations, we heard from our post-secondary partners, faculty, and student association students, and other Manitobans. Their feedback was very valuable. Their input was very valuable toward informing the development of a policy, and in this case, the future tuition fees and student fees policy. This future policy will consider the balance between student affordability, institutional sustainability, and fiscal responsibility. I look forward, my department looks forward to continue working with our partners to develop a flexible and responsive policy that will ensure that a quality post-secondary education remains accessible and affordable for Manitoba students. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Thank you. Can the minister provide the most recent wait times for students trying to access Manitoba student aid?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said earlier today, we are continually enhancing our processes and products that include Manitoba Student Aid. I know that my staff are working hard each and every day to ensure that the applications and inquiries from clients are addressed in a timely manner. We know that the previous NDP government didn't know how to run a Manitoba student aid system and wasted $15 million. $15 million of taxpayers' money on an outdated student aid software, resulting in delays in students' applications and disbursements of funds. The lack of action on their part has created a mess for our government. We have a plan to improve that. So again, I want to thank all the hardworking staff at Student Aid for enhancing the processes and products to ensure that we meet the students' needs.
The Honourable Member for St. Patel.
Many students complain about not being able to get through the phone lines on student aid, as well as no response to their emails and having a hard time getting any information from the student aid offices. What is the minister doing to address these? Is he increasing staffing, or is he making any changes to address these to improve student aid for Manitobans?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I can tell my critic is that 16,000 applications have been processed. That's approximately 60% of funds being dispersed for a total of $74 million, right? I know my staff has been working hard on cleaning the mess that the previous NDP government, who didn't know how to run the Manitoba aid system because they left us with this mess, and again, wasted $15 million on outdated student aid software, resulting in delays, and we're cleaning up that mess. But you know what? the Manitoba Student Aid Division is working very hard to get those funds out, but I can tell you that 60% of these funds have been dispersed. During this time, it's been a very peak time to get these out there. But again, the department is working hard to enhance the processes of student aid.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
Some students bring up the fact that, this is a provincially run student aid program, and they're attending a provincially funded post-secondary institution, for example, University of Manitoba, and saying how it's confusing that they, might be facing penalties and inability to attend a publicly funded university, and also, issues with this publicly funded student aid. And so wondering if there's a connection that could be made there to help a university, a publicly funded university, understand that there's issues that are beyond the student's control with Manitoba Student Aid that would, and allow them to continue their education at that publicly funded institution while the issues with Manitoba Student Aid get sorted out, so that the student doesn't get caught in the middle, their education doesn't get suffered, understanding that there is a lot of public funding going in, obviously with Manitoba Student Aid, as well as the institution that they're attending. So has the minister considered any plans or proposals to allow students to continue their education so they don't suffer in any way while they might be living through delays with Manitoba Student Aid?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We always work in close partnership with our post-secondary institutions, and we are working with our post-secondary institution to defer tuition. We've had regular communication with them. We know that it's very important that students who have not received their aid, get their student aid in a timely manner. But the thing is, we have communicating with PSIs to defer tuition, and we've had some really good conversations about that. They've been very understanding, and regular communication is ongoing until we have this situation resolved.
I thank the minister for that response. So to be clear, if a student is having specific problems accessing education due to a delay in their student aid, what process should they follow? Should they be contacting your office to have that looked at in terms of the specific, their specific case? Because many times when they reach out to student aid, they're not getting response, there's extreme wait on a phone line, and the folks there aren't able to be as helpful. Should they be reaching out to your office, Minister?
The honourable minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've said before, you know what? We're committed to students. We're committed to ensuring Manitobans have access to higher education, and in this case, Manitoba Student Aid. We want to find a balance between affordability, institutional sustainability, and quality education. With regards to the question that my critic asked, I just want to let him know that I know that Manitoba Student Aid is working extremely hard to ensure that we get these funds out for these students. But to answer your question directly, to the member of St. Vital, the first step is to contact that respective post-secondary institution first, and then if there's any issue at all, please contact my department, and we'll assure that we get back to the student who is affected.
The honourable member for St. Vital.
Thank you. In the annual report for advanced education, skills, and immigration, page 30, it's clear that the grant for grant assistance was decreased from last year, as well as the grant assistance for apprenticeships. I'm asking the minister, how he expects to continue to provide, ensure that our post-secondary institutions are thriving and successful when we see year after year reductions in funding for post-secondary institutions that we see again evidenced on page 30 of the annual report.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, the one thing that I can tell the critic is that the department has started public consultations with regard to skills and apprenticeship to modernize the apprenticeship model to address the labor market shortages as part of our 5-year action plan.
Order, please. The hour being 5 p.m. Committee rise. Call on the Speaker. The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.